I said, why me? I ate organic food. I was good to the earth. I was a milk hauler and watched all these beautiful farms go away. We're a very foolish society. We had a sustainable lifestyle here.
That's not Eric Schubert.
That's not Eric Schubert. Where is Eric?
Eric Schubert. No, well, who are you? Are you Eric? You're not Eric Schubert.
Where's Eric?
Who?
You talk,
Well, what's your name?
Warren Anderson.
Oh, you're next. That's fine. Go, Warren,
Okay.
but I don't see Eric.
Did he
Eric
leave?
gone? Okay. All right, you're next.
Okay,
do
I'm deaf, so I'm glad I don't have to do much listening.
No, it is. It is.
Are
But I had-
we set?
We
We're
are.
set.
Oh, I was having some clam chowder in the Washburn when I saw in the paper this was coming off, so that's why I rushed over here. I just wanted to, when I just read about having an open pit mine over here, I've kind of been around mines and iron ore and stuff most of my life, and I just couldn't believe that anybody would even think of digging into the Penokee Hills to have an open pit mine there. It was a good share of my life, my younger life. I was an early teenager, and every day I'd look across and see those Penokee Hills from Madeline Island. And in the fall, there is no more beautiful sight, just as the sun is going down and the different levels of, you can see as the land rises there, and which there's no doubt in my mind that water will go downhill, and if you have an open pit mine and so forth, there's going to be a lot of crud running down and into Lake Superior. But I also spent about 10 years in Minnesota in the ore business, and I also loved to pick agates, so I was always picking agates around. And when they first started with the taconite mining there, I'd be up in, if anybody tells you Minnesota has 10,000 lakes, I think they got 100,000. There's lakes all over the place, but I'd see these little lakes and stuff where the runoff would go, and a bunch of dead fish there. I thought people were using explosives to kill the fish, and somebody said no, it was from the mining, that the grit gets in their gills and blah, 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 yeah. So I saw all that, and then the first person I saw that had much to do with taconite, I gave him a ride. He was hitchhiking to the Twin Cities, and he told me about the lung problems. Now I'm talking about all the good jobs that are produced. That is the biggest baloney I ever heard of. But anyway, he was on his way to the cities for medical attention, and he carried a towel with him, and every time he'd cough, there'd be blood in that towel. And he said most of the guys that worked in the taconite plant, that they were having really serious lung trouble, and of course they were told that, you know, they'll get all fixed up and everybody will they'll be well taken care of. Well, he never came back, so I don't know how. That's just one of the things. Another observation, I had a friend from the Twin Cities that really loved to fly, and he might fly to Dallas for dinner, and we might fly a lot around here. Well, one day we were flying around northern Minnesota, and I was telling him about the biggest open pit mine in the world, and we looked around. Anyways, I'll try and shorten this story. As we came over the lake, it was somewhere up around Silver Bay or someplace up in there, and there was a big sluiceway along the edge of the lake, and the taconite tailings, they had been running them right into Lake Superior, and it was so absolutely obvious where the tailings came out and into Lake Superior, and it was just like you took a different colored crayon and this definite track coming down and right into the Apostle Islands, all the way across Lake Superior. And it was so evident, and, you know, just unbelievable. And my friend, we never had a camera, so he came back the following weekend just so we could go up and really do some documentation. And here it went out about a quarter of a mile and disappeared. But I knew people that worked on I think they had a research vessel here in Ashland too, but I knew somebody on another research vessel. And he said that the lake currents can change from one day to the next. So you see something, you go back the next day and it just isn't. And he said this was probably the case, but we went back the following weekend and this really discolored wastewater just went into the lake, and then about a half a mile out, it disappeared, went down. but that definitely discolored water coming out of that sluiceway and right down, and it was between Long Island and Madeline right over here. And I was thinking then, I wonder if the people in Bad River know about this, you know. So anyways, we never got any good picture of that. I got some pictures, but not of when it was really horrible. But also in the wintertime, we'd set nets. And when the trout weren't coming very good, we started going for herring. And pretty soon we weren't even getting much for herring. But when you lifted nets, and especially with float nets, and I don't know if there's any fishermen around here or not, but but if you set float nets, I mean, they never get near the bottom of the lake even. Use Hilux jugs or something to float them. And we were wondering for a couple of years, our nets started coming up, and where we dragged them out on the ice, it was all black. And so after that, we started really doing our own research on it. And and there was pretty soon there was no herring around there either. And that was right along by Long Island. And I don't think it was going over toward Bad River yet, but and who was watching the store then? They say they're going to watch the streams, and I've seen these things happen when they even build a sluiceway to go in to send it into Lake Superior. Oh yeah, the jobs. That is a real laugh and a half. Since when does a 45-ton clam need a bunch of people? It only takes one person to run it. And I have to mention, I don't know who knows or was around, but in 1953, they had decided that it was a lot cheaper to get iron ore from South America. I forget which country it was, but they could just shove it with bulldozers and then ship it up here. So at the time I worked for Duluth-Mesalbi Iron Range Railway loading for lake freighters, and I got laid off, and I was pretty well up the seniority ladder, and they shut the mines down in Minnesota. And about a year later, I was listening to Bob Dylan's, who I really liked his playing and singing, and he was singing North Country Blues. And hey, man, now I know what he's talking about, because that year I went to southern Minnesota and helped harvest corn for about 6 months, because I was laid off from the iron ore in Minnesota. It wasn't going no more. But then they rolled the way they loaded them, they rolled one over and rolled a ship over and had a few more problems. They didn't even know how to load a boat, and that was one of my jobs. So after that, they came back to Minnesota and started shipping again. But I mean, they do anything to lay, like the song says in South America, where they work practically for nothing. What I'm trying to do here is a job isn't worth much, and especially the way our state is going right now with a lot of anti-union activity. Another thing about mines, was a very busy person on Madeline Island for a number, somebody talked me into coming back there because there hadn't, when I left, there was 3 jobs, and they finally I came back and worked with a couple of people, and pretty soon there was, I'd say 150 people coming over on the ferry every day to go to work. And right now there's still an awful, I think Mr. Joe could attest to some of that, but that's a busy, busy place. But one of the things, somebody had the big idea of building windmills or something for electricity, and I did a little research on that and the trees that they'd have to cut. Anyway, I learned something about destroying vegetation and how the earth around that area goes up a couple of degrees and contributes to global warming. Well, anyway, if you take out the trees and everything in a mine over here on Penokee Ridge, that'd take an awful lot of vegetation. It's just it's an idea. I couldn't even believe that people even thought of it. I don't know how. And I think that, but I just quickly scribbled this down here, and I guess.
Menu or what? Clam chowder.
Pardon?
And your clam chowder menu. Huh?
And my clam chowder is probably cold now anyway.
Thank you very much.
But this is my observations, and I know.
Thank you.
I know a little
Thank
bit
you.
about mining and all the whole.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Gary Cholwick, followed by Pete Norgren. I'm going to go through the list here. There's only a few left. Erica Zoker? Erica? Yeah, okay. Billy Baz? What is this? Oh, Jesus, I get it now. All right, Melissa Hellman? I mean, jeez. I mean, you guys. Matt Schilling?
That's a real one.
That's real. Mark Andrew Baston. I told my staff if they brought one more up, I was going to fire them. So that's why they did that, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, I want to apologize for adding to your list. I'm a Johnny come lately here. My name is Gary Cholwick, and I live in Washburn, Wisconsin. And I made my living in the Lake Superior Basin since 1976. Under it, on it, in it, and around it. Actually 1978 in Washburn. For the 2 years previous, I'd lived on Gordon Lake, which is just south of the Great Divide that separates the Lake Superior and the Mississippi River watersheds. For those 2 years, I drove through the Penokee Mountains nearly every day on my commute to Ashland. And since I lived in that area, my free time, I explored the Penokees and have some firsthand knowledge of their natural features and resources. And I must say here, I must give my disclaimer, all the opinions and viewpoints I express are my own and do not reflect the official view of my employer. I work for the outfit that prints our money, the feds. More specifically, the Lake Superior Biological Station, of the Great Lakes Science Center, of the U.S. Geological Survey, of the Department of Interior. Although I've done considerable academic coursework in geology, I'm a biologist by vocation. For the past 22 years, I've worked on fishery research vessels, all on Lake Superior, and most recently, the research vessel Kayak. I circumnavigate this lake several times a year. I've averaged in 22 years 100 days on the water, monitoring the fish populations, doing basic research. It's applied research for managing one of our great resources, the fishery stocks of Lake Superior. We take an ecosystem approach. We look at all the players all of the critters, all of the abiotic factors such as the geology, the water chemistry, these types of things. The lake is dynamic, it changes. What we're concerned with are man changes, things that can happen. Working and living on a research vessel gives you a lot of time to think. There's a lot of running time between sampling stations for dragging a net to sample fish, running sonars to map the bottom, whatever the task is. And in doing that, you have a lot of time to observe your surroundings and think about this greatest of the Great Lakes that's out the window here. And I'd like to share a bit of the knowledge and insights I've gained from those experiences with you because they underpin and greatly influence my position on this mine. Although I earn my living from the government doing research on Lake Superior, I approach my job as one of working for the resource, first. Second, for the people who depend on this resource for their livelihood. And lastly, for the government, because they cut the check. Clean water is the essence of life. Without it, we can't live more than a few days. Lake Superior is the largest lake in the world by surface area, the third largest by volume, and arguably the most pristine of any. 98% of all North America's fresh water is contained in the Great Lakes, and most of it's in Superior. You could put all the other lakes in Superior and still have room. It takes nearly 200 years for Lake Superior to completely replace its water. This is known as residence time. So anything soluble put in the lake will take that long to flow out of it. So you need to consider that when you're thinking about protecting this lake. For those of you who want to think of it as a giant toilet, it would take 200 years to flush away the crap you would put in it. I don't think anyone would want to wait that long between those needs. For the 9 years I worked on my first research vessel, the Siskiwit, we pulled our potable water directly out of Lake Superior's offshore waters and drank it. No one ever got ill. I want to see that continue to be the case. The soft tissue cells making up our bodies are mostly water. It takes 7 years to replace these cells. So in 7 years of living in the Lake Superior Basin and drinking its water, we're mainly composed of its essence. We are the lake, it is us. Any wonder why those of us who reside in this basin feel a deep connection to this lake? That in many cases is spiritual, as we've heard from our Native American friends. This lake is not only water, it's the basin that holds the water and the watershed that replenishes that water. It is standard public health policy to protect water reservoirs and their watershed from all development in order to maintain water quality. So why should we treat Lake Superior any differently? In essence, it is the world's largest and most pristine reservoir. For a few hundred jobs of limited duration, we should risk degrading this unique regional, national, and international treasure known as Gitchigumi by its first inhabitants, our Ojibwe brothers and sisters, and as Lake Superior by us latecomers. There has to be a compelling need to risk the wild rice beds and spawning lake sturgeon of the Bad River. My Ojibwe neighbors have spoken and will continue to speak of this watershed and its vital importance to their people and culture. They were asked to cede the lands to the newcomers. In exchange, they received guarantees to be able to continue harvesting wild rice, lake sturgeon, and all of the other things that make up their life and make their life worth living. The newcomers, and what they were given in exchange was that right, and some land that the newcomers regarded as wasteland, a big swamp, and a river they called the Bad because you couldn't navigate it because it had so many rapids and waterfalls. They thought it had no value. Now, as soon as someone determines there is value in its mineral resources, they want to risk despoiling this river. Now you can maybe understand why my neighbors are upset by this process and why they speak with such great emotion. I think they have been good stewards of this watershed, and they need to be thanked for that. It's known as the Everglades of the North for a reason, and it's that sensitive, and it's that valuable. We need to fully address their concerns. The mine proponents claim they can mitigate all the environmental risks and engineer a state-of-the-art mine that fully protects this watershed. At best, this is an unproven and unsubstantiated claim that must be supported by data, not opinion, not belief. We need data before a decision can be made. You can't rush legislation in to accelerate this mine without adequate information. That's just unconscionable. We can cite many engineering failures in our world and in this country. Bridges that fall down in Minnesota, nuclear reactors that fail. The list goes on. Engineering is not always a solution. Mother Nature always trumps engineering. Civilization after civilization has learned this, and the ruins litter our world to show that this is the fact. They can never fully guarantee that this mine will not pollute or degrade this watershed. We cannot take this risk in this unique and precious place that has greater importance and value that far exceeds the temporary jobs and the finite iron ore mined from our watershed, which is priceless to us. As to this mine, not now, not here, not ever.
You're listening to a special live broadcast of a listening session at the American in Ashland on the Democratic and Republican iron ore mining bills on Wisconsin Public Radio stations 90.9 WUWS in Ashland, 91.3 KUWS in Superior, and 97.7 WRNC LP in Ashland.
I'm Peter Nordgren. I'm from Lake Nebagaman, Wisconsin, and I'm speaking today as chair of the Advocacy Committee of the North Country Trail Association. The association is the citizen group that maintains, supports, develops the North Country National Scenic Trail. We work with the National Park Service on this, and we have about 2,400 members along the route of the trail, which covers 7 states from New York to North Dakota, and about 300 members within the state of Wisconsin. As you may know, the North Country Trail crosses the northern tier of Wisconsin and passes through the Penokee Range at a distance of about 3 miles on the north side, parallel to the proposed mine site. The North Country Trail was authorized by Congress through the National Trail System Act of 1980. The route was designated at that time, and the National Park Service in the master plan for the trail has designated it as the National Scenic Trail that has high-quality hiking experiences and high-quality scenic values. Accordingly, the North Country Trail Association is quite concerned about the potential impact of the proposed mine and, of course, the legislation that is designed to enable it. Our specific concerns are with the impact on the Tyler Forks River watershed. The North Country Trail will cross the Tyler Forks River twice, once at Redden Falls, not far to the north of where the proposed mine will be, and again further downstream closer to Copper Falls State Park. We have more general concerns about the impact on the recreational and scenic values, the potential of the legislation to result in more dust, more noise pollution, more light pollution in the area that the trail crosses. The North Country Trail Association is going to continue to monitor the development of this legislative effort. Should things move forward in the future, we would engage the National Park Service as an active participant in looking at the potential on the trail in the future to ensure that the recreation qualities of the trail are maintained in Iron County and, of course, across the rest of northern Wisconsin. And I'll close by simply saying that on a broader scale, we are concerned about the change to the mining laws of the state and the potential for other mining in other parts of the state where our trail runs, as well as our sister trail, the Ice Age National Scenic Trail, the other National Scenic Trail within Wisconsin. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Erica.
Hi, I'll try to keep it short. I know you've been here all day, and I thank you for that and for the opportunity to speak. My name is Erica Zoscher. I'm a student at Northland College, and I want to talk about water. I'm studying environmental geoscience at Northland, so I have the privilege of learning a lot about Earth's processes and the effects we have on them. Now, the chemistry of pollution can get pretty complicated, but in the context of this proposed bill, SB1, AB1, and the proposed mine in the Penokees, I think we can keep it pretty simple. We need water to live, and it's the matrix of life. It's precious and it's also scarce, which leads me to showing my pie chart that I created, showing the distribution of fresh water on Earth. And so about 70% of it is frozen, about 29% is in groundwater, and less than 1% is surface waters, which is rivers and lakes. And 10% of all of this is here in Lake Superior, and I think we can all agree that we're blessed to have it here when people throughout the world die every day because they don't have access to clean drinking water. And also, so mines, we know they're destructive, they're very dirty, and I think that scaling back the responsibilities of the mining companies for cleanup is just foolish, and consequently, I think that SB1, AB1 is foolish because it allows that. So to wrap it up, from my understanding, laws are put in place to help keep us safe, but the proposed legislation will allow harm to come to us, and it'll allow harm to come to this precious water we have in our rivers and in our beautiful Lake Superior. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Melissa Hellman.
Thanks for taking the time to hear my voice. I was here earlier, and then I had to leave to go take care of our chickens on our farm. So thanks for adding me back onto the list, although you called me and I wasn't present a couple hours ago. I live here in Ashland. We just bought some property just a little bit farther away from the lake where we used to live. This place has been my home for the last 8 years. I moved here from Pennsylvania, where I come from a very small town where the water is polluted, and we can't do much there anymore. We can't swim there as often, and cannot gather much food. So moving here to clean water has been very essential. I drink and I haul every drop of the water that I consume from 2 of the local wells here, including Prentice Park and Wisloski Beach. I wanted to include in here a description from Ashland, Bayfield, Douglas, Iron County Land Water Conservation Newsletter from 2006. This explains to you the breakdown of where our drinking water comes from and what bodies of water it circulates through. The City of Ashland and Superior residents get tap water that is pumped from Lake Superior. Most of the groundwater along Lake Superior's south shore lies under a clay cap. This clay blocks most recharge and serves as a protective barrier from surface pollutants. Most of our groundwater is recharged in the Penokee Mountain Range, extending from Douglas County to Ironwood. This quote means that the water we drink here starts its journey to our wells by seeping into the cracks in the rocks of the Penokee Hills. If you destroy or pollute the Penokees, you will do the same to our water, the same to us all. This land that I live upon is Anishinaabe land, home to the Bad River Band of Lake Superior Chippewa, as well as the Red Cliff tribal members. There are inherent sovereign and treaty rights that are on the edge of being annihilated with the notion of this taconite mine. Any alteration to our water table, air quality, or environmental effects directly impact the Bad River tribal members, which have been for too long facing the defaults of our irrational decisions of what our culture describes as progress. These societal needs for mining and extracting from our earth are felt by citizens in those specific areas, but in general usually tended to be targeted at tribal peoples, and this is an intentional assault upon the tribe and current and future generations to come. We must learn how to honor the treaties and honor our relationship with First Nations before we even think to propose our Western desires of progress. Currently, 1.1 billion people throughout the world are in serious threat of contaminated water supplies or the scarcity of water. That is 1 in 6 people in our world. It is an extreme privilege for us to have access to clean water, a privilege that should be shared amongst all walks of life, never debated or challenged, an inherent right for all. Less than 1% of fresh water in our entire world is available for use, and I believe we have no right to alter our local water system. We must protect the water. Water is life. Here in Ashland County, we are rich with clean, available water, something to never risk or change. I would like to take a little bit more time to acknowledge a few communities, and I'm really proud to live in a community of people who are passionate and are honoring that. So thank you.
Thank you. We're down to 2. Matt Schilling?
I'll call some more.
I am really glad I'm not the last one to talk.
He asked to be last, so.
Thank you, Mark. Is it Mark? Up at the stage, thank you very much. My name's Matt Schilling. I'm a high school teacher in Hayward. And I'd like to thank all the members that were at the table today. And I think if they're in their cars, they're probably still listening. So those of you that are in your cars driving home, Mr. Miller, Mr. Schultz, Mr. Lehman, Erpenbach, all those are probably listening, hopefully. A lot of the stuff that...
Make the point that they are on their way home. They may be listening. I just hope I get home before they get home down in Janesville.
Maybe not.
I'm just kidding.
And I heard you haven't had a break yet, so I'm going to go a little longer. No. I wasn't planning on talking. I came here initially to listen, then I left, then I came back. I felt necessary to come back. Thank you, Senator Jauch, for getting this committee and being able to hear everybody up here. The impact is not just the people that are in this room, not just the people that are listening, but there's people in classrooms around the state of Wisconsin that are being impacted by this. In the high school in Hayward, in the middle school in Hayward, those students understand what the role of government is. And we've discussed it in class, and talking about the 5th generation, Mr. Rose, and the 7th generation. I think there's a generation of people that understand what good government looks like and what a good fight is. And I'd like to thank all of you up at the stage and all of those that spoke here today. And the last item is that occasionally I turn on a radio station from the Milwaukee area, a flag staff for the Brewers. And if you listen to that radio station, you would not understand any of these stories that are here. The advertisements that are out there for this mine in the backyard here, they don't understand. They see 3,000 jobs at $80,000, and they don't understand the impact on families, communities, and the environment. So thank you, and of those of you that are listening on the radio, find someone that doesn't understand it and tell them, please.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for being a teacher.
Thank you for teaching, Matt.
Gold. Mark Andrew Baston, and Mark asked to speak last. There always has to be someone who is last, except I get the last word, but come on up, Mark.
This is my friend Sam. He already spoke today, and I'll be really concise. It'll just take me a few minutes. My name is Andy Baston. I live in the Frank Bellinger settlement, 10 miles west of Red Cliff. Marvin Defoe Sr. and Gina Defoe adopted me into their family over 17 years ago. I went down to Ohio for a while, and Gina passed on, and I never got to say goodbye to her. Also, I wanted to thank everybody for being here, and I just wanted to sing her a little song so she could hear me. It's just going to take a second. And I also wanted to thank Scott Walker for being brave enough to come up here. B.I.A. Don't you blame me for your problems. I'm not your Indian anymore. You belong to white men. B.I.A. Don't you blame me for your problems. I'm not your Indian anymore. You belong to white men. B.I.A. Don't you blame me for your problems. I'm not your Indian anymore. You belong to white men. B.I.A. Don't you blame me for your problems. I'm not your Indian anymore. You belong to white men. Thank you very much, and I just wanted to say one thing real quick to Marvin Defoe Sr., who's sitting in his apartment in Washburn behind IGA. I miss Gina, Marvin. And you told me not to get tattoos, and you called me a potlicker. But I'm sorry. I'll show you this when I get back to your place if you're still awake and you're not sleeping. But you can't see it now. And I got this for Gina. It's a light blue star. And since I didn't see her pass on, I can't imagine it in my mind that she really left. And whenever I think of her, I look down at this star and I can see her, and I miss her. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm going to let my colleagues say a few words, but one statement I do want to make very briefly, and that is that as essential as water is to our life, a citizen's voice is essential to our democracy. And none of us, every one of us, should feel good today that democracy is alive, well, and thriving in northern Wisconsin as a result of this 9.5-hour hearing. You have improved the democratic process, and your voices will be shared with others. I'd like to we'll kind of go down the other end. Steve Smith, who came up and spent the entire day from Shell Lake, if you'd like to make a couple of words, and then Nick, and then I want to say a couple things about Janet before she speaks.
First, I want to say, Bob, you win. I tried to make it without a break. You did.
I've been sipping water.
But I want to thank everybody for coming and speaking and being respectful of the different viewpoints. There's no magic button here. But water is the thing, and I don't think anyone can dispute that. We're going to be outvoted, but I don't think we'll be outspoken.
Oh. That was good.
Well, I too would like to thank everybody for coming out today. We've had a lot of great testimony, and a lot of you have sat here all day. I think the most important thing for me when it comes to public hearings is the fact that when you sit and listen to people, you learn. And a lot of times, people are too busy in their lives to actually sit and listen and take in what people are trying to convey. And it's unfortunate that we have a lot of colleagues that don't have time to listen to the people of northern Wisconsin. And what I can tell you is when I had an opportunity to testify before the mining committee in Madison, I was very upset when I was cut off by the chairperson. But not as upset as I was when I was driving home listening on the radio and they cut the testimony off and I knew there was still people waiting to be heard. And that, to me, shows a tremendous disrespect for our democratic process here in Wisconsin. And we are very fortunate to have leaders like Senator Jauch who have led a common sense, respectful approach to this issue, a very emotional issue for a lot of people over the course of the last couple of years. And Senator Jauch, I really don't know how he does it. He has not got up from that seat all day. It's a long day, and it's been a long couple of years for Senator Jauch, and Janet's been right there with them. And I just want to say, from the people that testified today, especially the young people, we had a couple young people from Northland College. There's a young lady over here from Bad River. It's just the people of northern Wisconsin are different than the rest of the people in the state, and I'm always so impressed by the folks up here. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You give me the courage and energy to go down to Madison and try to represent your voice as well, as best as I can. And I've learned a lot from Bob over the years, and love serving with Janet, and just want to thank them for their service too. Thank you all.
Thank you, Nick. Let me before Janet speaks, you still got to listen to her and then me. No. We're not, I haven't finished, and she hasn't. I'm not going to take a long time, believe me. But I want to compliment Janet. While I've been in the chair, and by the way, that wasn't because I wanted to prove a point. It's because I felt I owed you 1,000% of my attention today, given the rude manner in which the North has been treated, in which citizens have been excluded from this process. But Janet has just been such a champion for northern Wisconsin, and enduring 2 years in which she spoke the truth, spoke power to truth, and I'm so appreciative of the partnership that we have representing northern Wisconsin, her sense of fairness, her sense of respect, and her sense of duty to do what's right for the people of northern Wisconsin. So thank you, Janet. Janet?
Thank you, Bob.
Well, it's almost time to go home. I want to thank each and every one of you for the part that you have played today. We are always better for it when we come together, always. In some cases, the outcome isn't what we want. In some cases, we hear things we don't want to hear. But when we come together with respect for each other, we are always better for it. I have learned a lot today. This is just another example of how a community comes together and then shares with each other, and then through the people here on the side, we are being broadcast all over the world. Paul Demain shared with me that over 1,600 people have tapped into this broadcast through his broadcast, and that includes 9 foreign countries. We're being listened to in Germany and Uruguay, Argentina, and that will have a difference in ways that we don't know. We hear about other things happening in other communities, and that informs us. We are in the process, I hope, I know, of informing other people through our story, through your stories. So regardless, I know that we're going to be taking serious votes in the coming weeks, votes whose outcomes I probably will not agree with, but I know that we are better for this day, and that we will have together many, many more better days to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet. And I promise myself, as well as to you, I'll be brief. This has been a very powerful experience for each and every one of us. Anyone listening, whether you be for the mine, against the mine, for deregulation, for changes in the law, or against changes in the law, cannot help but be touched by the passionate presentation of people who have a deep love of the land. And they live with a sense of purpose to be stewards to protect that land. There is no higher calling for any of us, as Gaylord Nelson so eloquently stated. Our environment, our economy is a wholly owned subsidiary of the land we walk on, the air we breathe, and the water we drink. And we have to treat those properties well if we are going to live well. So much has been learned today, and I must tell you that we will be doing what we can to share this message. We'll do a summary of the presentation. The concept of stewards to the land seems to be a troubling one for those who only see an economic value to the land, who want to make money off the land, and only can see things in life in economic terms. Very clearly, the people of northern Wisconsin, and we're blessed by the beauty of northern Wisconsin. I think we're more blessed by the people who live in northern Wisconsin, who respect that beauty, who fight to preserve that beauty, and who articulated a value that is all Wisconsin. Remember that Wisconsin is defined, our borders are defined by water. 2 Great Lakes and a great river. And the character of the people is defined by the life that we have associated with water, our economy, our way of life, and our essence of who we are as a people. Those should not be minimized, but unfortunately have been trivialized by those who only see the issue in microscopic terms and are willing to make huge trade-offs in our laws to fast-track a process, to weaken the state's ability to protect the resources, to give the company unfettered authority over the best interest of the public, because they can only see it in a microscopic term. To those of you who think you haven't made a difference, you have. There are, as Senator Cullen mentioned, think about the fights that have been really critical in this country. Civil rights, equal rights, Native American rights. Wasn't that many years ago that the Native American people did not have a voice, would not show up with the same kind of presence and passion and strength. And today they do. And they're not standing alone. And that's a very important statement for us to make as a state. This bill came out of both committees last week, frankly, because they didn't want to hear any more criticism that they weren't going to listen to the people. I don't have an accurate count, but there was well over 100 people who testified today. It is at least 10 to 1 in opposition to the legislation. I'm sure the registrations are 10 to 1 in the registration, which speaks volumes for the real feelings of the people of northern Wisconsin. It also explains why our Republican colleagues chose not to come up here, because they didn't want to listen to views that they don't agree with, and they choose to shut them out. Thanks to KUWS, 90.9, 91.3 in Superior. Thank you very much for your being here. Wisconsin State Journal, Ron Seeley was here, Paul Demain from News from Indian Country, and others. I'm not getting them all, I'm sure. But this is it.
Just one other meeting.
Citizens Media Co-op.
Citizens Media.
Citizens Media Co-op.
Wisconsin
and Wisconsin Eye. And Wisconsin Eye. And there are people.
In Northland
College Radio. Well, you know, thank you for reminding me. It is a joy to participate in this democratic experience. These fights are not won or lost in a day. And clearly you are demonstrating the energy is growing. The awareness is growing. During the executive session last week, Senator Grothman said on 2 occasions, there are going to be more amendments. And there are going to be more amendments because even the Republicans are beginning to recognize that the bill is flawed, that it's bad, it needs to be repaired. Now, will it be passed at some point? I agree with Senator Cullen, but that's only the beginning of the fight. We're right. We're trying to approach a responsible piece of legislation to do what is good and fair and right for the people of Wisconsin. We will continue to do so, and your words are like the rivers that flow through the north, clear, strong, and we will share them with our colleagues in a way in which they can't help but hear those words as we pass on them. So thank you again for being here, and we will look forward to keeping in touch with you. And I want to thank the staff, my staff, her staff. These people have been terrific. They brought in way too many slips, but they were been terrific. So thank you all very much.
This has been a special live broadcast of a public listening session at the American in Ashland on the Democratic and Republican iron ore mining bills. Good evening. It's 7:01. I'm WRNC Station Manager Danielle Kading, and with me is Wisconsin Public Radio Regional General Manager John Munson. This listening session has spanned over the course of 10 hours, and geez, John, I think, you know, a listening session is the best cure for the common cold. My cough is almost gone.
Well, you know, there was the one thing that came through here today was that everybody who spoke with a great deal of passion. It was overwhelmingly against the mining legislation, but the people who came here, as Senator Jauch made a great point of talking about not wanting anyone to feel intimidated about expressing their point of view and sharing it with those members of the committee that made it up here today. And there were some Republicans. It wasn't just Democrats. It was mostly Democrats, of course, but there was a great deal of passion here today, people speaking from the heart, not always on point, but letting the representatives who had assembled here know exactly how they felt.
And just under 100 people spoke during the course of the 10-hour listening session, 94 people by my count, and at its highest point today, I'd say there were around 200 to 250 people in the room, wouldn't you?
At least that, yes.
And it started off with a lot of demonstration. Earlier, before the session even began, there was an Idle No More protest organized by members of the Red Cliff and Bad River bands of Lake Superior, Chippewa, with signs that said, "Keep Mother Earth beautiful, genocide is unacceptable, and no mine." And there were also signs and presentations throughout the session, including singing, as we're hearing right now, and Ojibwe introductions, posters, and charts, and even a milk carton at one point in reference to unsafe drinking water in Duluth years ago due to reserve mining there. Some of the more impassioned testimony that you referred to earlier came from David Zepsik. I think he kind of stood out throughout the day today, the owner of the Four Corners Bar here in Ashland, saying things like, "We were foolish to watch it go away. I trusted these people that were supposed to be in charge of us." He just spoke really emotionally about the issue of mining and saying that there are no jobs in town and wanting to take a stand on this issue.
Yeah, there were a lot of questions raised about the whole jobs and economic development issue, and at the end of the day, I think the bottom line for a lot of these people is, okay, so even if these jobs exist, and we don't know that they do, even if these jobs exist, is it worth it? And what's going to happen afterwards? Wanting to look for an example of a successfully reclaimed open pit mine, and so far no one has provided one.
And folks from the higher education community kind of spoke out on that matter, looking at the science in particular, including Tom Fitz, who's an associate professor of geoscience at Northland College and also a university professor from the University of Wisconsin system, Bill Swenson, talking about some of the impacts on the science there. And also we saw folks from outside the area, maybe not as much Iron County, although there were a couple of people that spoke in favor of a mining operation or a possible mining operation, but we saw some people come from downstate, including Wausau, Eau Claire, Auburn, and even folks from Minnesota talking about their experience living in taconite mining country over there, and whether or not it's brought prosperity to them. And in the case of a couple of from Sudan, Minnesota, they say no. But some other things that came up throughout the day, obviously the Native American community turned out in force, Bad River Band, Red Cliff Band, and also the Kruderay tribal members came out to speak in opposition to this mine. And at one point it got to the point where people were saying things like, I would die rather than see this mine come here, or at least that they would fight to prevent a mine from being located in this area. So definitely a lot of emotion, a lot of passion around this issue.
Well, it remains to be seen what happens in the legislature. I think one of the interesting points that was made, a number of people made this point, that there's quite a bit of doubt as to whether or not the mine would actually get built, and some question whether that was even the intent behind the legislation. That there were a number of people who testified, described the SB1 and AB1 as a Trojan horse kind of thing, and that there was really something else going on.
The Native people also knew that the Creator had given everything for us to survive on this earth.